I'll admit, I saw in passing. Now, I haven't done much on this one. Haven't. Well, you see, okay. Before we obviously, I just saw the comment in chat about the drone flyovers. Talking of that, and I did talk about that in one of the earlier streams. The facts: airspace was penetrated by a drone of a type operated by Russia. Yes. Yep. Okay, that happened. Where did it come from? Now, balance of probabilities, probably Russian launched. The one in Romania is really weird. I'm surprised that it's considered, given where it got to and everything else. Yeah, that's a bit more sus. Um, I think based on the rapid reaction and everything else and the other details, and those will upload those videos in due course so people can see them. Um, the I suspect that those ones were lost control. They lost control of them, but it was interesting that each of the penetrations of Polish and Romanian airspace has been by an unarmed platform. In amongst all the armed drones and stuff going over Ukraine at the time, it's odd that it was only specifically unarmed. What do they call them? Um, Decoy drones that made it there. And given how many drones are active over the airspace, it'd be hard for NATO or Poland or anyone else to be looking at the mass wave of attacks and be able to pick out the half dozen that are continuing on and will penetrate your border in enough time to get an aircraft up to intercept. All right, so there's certain timelines involved and target identification and discrimination amongst existing air targets, which implies that, well, a couple of things. But the first one is that if it was a Russian launch thing, it implies that the Russians knew they'd lost control of them and had activated a side channel of communication with the Americans or maybe NATO and said, there's half dozen drones headed for Poland, they're decoy drones or whatever, they're unarmed, we no longer control them, they will enter your airspace at this time, giving them enough time to get the jets up to intercept. That's what I think the most likely outcome in cause is. The other one, and this comes back to, you again look at the history of what's been going on. The last time something fell on Poland from the Ukrainian conflict was a missile. And whilst they blamed the Russians initially, it was a misfired missile from a Ukrainian site. Human error, more than likely. They probably put their bearing in, heading in 180 out, and instead of flying east, it flew west and then fell over Poland. But it was used as to whip Russian for a while before, and that's the reason why you don't see as much imagery coming out of missiles being dropped on Ukraine or bombs, etc. Because a lot of what had been coming up and where people were able to identify based on markings was that the origin for a lot of the ordnance was not what was being told to us. That they were coming, there was Ukraine mucking up their own attacks, or that it was a claim of like thermobaric warheads, but the markings were of a fairly, well, not benign, it still blows up, but markings of a general purpose bomb, etc. So Um, one of the suggestions is you can have standoff jets on station at all times. That's a golly cap. Um, that is extraordinarily expensive and very, very difficult to maintain. And in fact, one of the concepts in warfare that is a mission kill, not a hard kill. A hard kill is blowing something up and killing the crew. A mission kill is denying the ability of an asset or a platform to carry out its mission. So, in the case of a submarine, a mission kill would be a navy able to keep the submarine under the water and away from whatever it was trying to do, be it intel or dropping off seals or whatever. Or a mission kill in terms of uh, the drone attacks over Ukraine would be all the decoys saturating air defense systems such that the Kinzels and the weapons carrying ones get through. You've you've killed the Patriots and everything else. You've denied their effectiveness by swarming them. And so it's a mission kill. You didn't blow them up, but you've prevented them from doing their mission. Having constant airborne patrols is a mission kill because aircraft, whilst they're designed to fly and things like that, you cannot sustain a 24/7 patrol like that without major issues. And so even at the coldest times of the Cold War, you had QRAs, QRFs, a quick response aircrew, quick response forces. These were aircrew and air jets sitting at various bases in Germany and across Western Europe on like a 90-second. They had to be airborne within a minute, going flat chat, because to have the aircraft airborne constantly was causing them to lose aircraft because aircrew crash them. Like the more you fly it, the more likely it is you'll crash it. And it was also causing escalation with the Russians because they'd penetrate airspace by accident. It's the more time you're flying up and down someone's airspace border, the more chances that you're going to wander across by accident. And in fact, there's examples in from aircraft engaged in Western aircraft doing this, where they'd accidentally shot down for real other Western aircraft because they were doing exercises. They pushed a button, interlocks didn't work, missile jumps off the rails, and it suddenly is for real. So it's a genuine mission kill. You can achieve nearly the same outcome by having a very well developed air defense radar system, which is designed to operate 24/7, and then respond with aircraft in an appropriate time frame. That time frame, though, there is a certain amount of lead time. You need time to get to it, which is why, given the penetration of Polish airspace and everything else, I believe that if it was a Russian system that was out of control, the Russians identified that and used side channel comms to give Poland and NATO enough time to get the jets there to intercept. The alternative, and this is sort of now heading down conspiracy theory territory, is that the Ukrainians had a supply, or they do have a supply, of crashed or otherwise forced down Russian drones that are serviceable, and that they could have then launched them into Poland and Romania to escalate things because public support for Ukraine is waning. And I've talked about that as well, that you see in the protest class, you see a falling off in public support for Ukraine. And so you've got this sudden rattling of sabres to get people focused on Ukraine again. So what better way to rattle the sabres and demand escalation and force NATO to come and do something than to fly something intentionally over their territory that you've captured and done? The idea of utilizing captured drones like that is not new. Just look at I don't think they've got a Global Hawk, but you look at the new North Korean strategic drone, it looks like a Global Hawk. You look at the drones the Iranians made post-2003. It was alleged that there were a number of American drones in Afghanistan that crashed in Iranian territory. Well, were they over Iran to begin with? Or were forced down. And so the Iranians were able to get a lot of tech for free, basically. And so when they put some of their new drones on display, people went, hey, they look like the drones that went missing. So the idea that Ukraine has a supply of crashed or otherwise functional but not Russian anymore drones, not out of the ordinary, not unexpected. The fact that the drones that then penetrated airspace were unarmed, all of them were unarmed and were decoys or otherwise, is what makes it smell funny, is what makes it seem like, well, if the Ukrainians were to do it, to escalate the situation. Doing it with an unarmed platform is enough to prompt a response from NATO, but not pose a direct threat to the Romanian or Polish people. And that's where okay, how do you disprove that? I mean, you get rid of a conspiracy by managing to disprove it. Unfortunately, like I said, last time something fell on Poland from the conflict, it was from Ukraine firing it and making a mistake. It wouldn't be given the propaganda and the media and stuff, I wouldn't put it past it being the case. But particularly given the nature of the entire penetration. And I'm concerned either way, but that second option I find to be more scary than the first one because that is the actions of a side that feels like it is losing and is taking more and more risky actions in order to try and stay alive or to try and keep on its feet. And the other part of it too is when you read the articles about the attempted intercepts, they talk about how hard those drones were to keep on radar, and they lost visual and radar contact with them from time to time. So that then also comes back to the question of, well, how did they know they were coming in the first place? If it was nearly impossible to track them when they were inside the country, well, how reliable were they at much further distance? Like, how reliable was that contact? And again, how did you know that they were coming for you and not just that part of Ukraine? And so there's all those questions that are conveniently not being answered. And I know there was a German guy in the chat the other day talking about all the other things that are happening, these attacks on German power infrastructure and stuff like that. Well, they're actually they're anarchists, far left groups attacking the transmission towers and substations in Berlin because they don't want Tesla factories. So the illusion, not illusion, allusion, media was allowed to allude that what was happening to the power network in Berlin and Germany was a result of Russians or Russian-aligned people. It was drones, it was this. No, they were hardcore anarchists.